Hello, and welcome to Sound Off with System One. I'm your host, Krista Kornchuk, and I'm here today with our panel of recruiting experts to speak with you about getting the compensation you deserve. Before we get started, here are a few words about System One. System One is a leading provider of specialized, highly technical outsourced services and workforce solutions to critical infrastructure, technology, life science, and government sectors, putting more than 650 employees and 9,000 contractors to work in the United States, Canada, and the UK. As you're tuning in today, please join us in the comments. Our marketing team will be monitoring them. Let us know where you're joining from and what industry you work in. And if you have any questions relevant to today's topics, please drop them in there as well, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. And before we get started with our subject, our panel of experts is going to be introducing their hot jobs, which you can view by scanning the QR code or by visiting jobs.system1.com. Shnazi, we'll start with you.
Hi, happy Friday. My name is Shanazi Gamharani. I'm a technical recruiter with System One. I've been with the company about 5 years, and I'm out of our Tampa, Florida office. The hot job I'm talking about today is an identity and access management architect. It's fully remote with a large financial company based out of Topeka, Kansas. You'll have the opportunity to lead the design, implementation, and optimization of CyberArk PAM and SailPoint IAM solutions. It's a great opportunity for anybody with at least 5 years of hands-on experience with CyberArk and SailPoint. Dennis?
Oh, hey. Hi, my name is Dennis Hurley. I'm with System One's Alta IT division. Been with the company for about 7 years now. Got a little over a decade in technical recruiting and staffing. The hot job that I have today is with a client here in the greater Cincinnati area. It's for a Java developer. We've had a long-standing relationship with this client. They're really looking for somebody that has some property and casualty industry experience as well too. So 5 years of Java development and then some property and casualty experience is probably the perfect fit for somebody that would be looking for this opportunity, and it's fully remote.
All right, and my name is Hugh Ramsey, engineering team director for System One in Houston. Been with System One for about 12 years, about 25 years in the staffing business in the Houston area. And the hot job that I will be talking about is a process design engineer. This is someone with a chemical engineering background. Location would be in the east downtown area of Houston, and it would be a great opportunity for an experienced engineer to join a small but growing team. And it's an opportunity that will be a long-term direct hire position.
Fantastic. And if you're interested in these roles, make sure you connect with our recruiters. And again, you can view all of their jobs by scanning the QR code or visiting jobs.system1.com. And without further ado, we're going to get started with our first question. How has the job market shifted in terms of compensation expectations? Dennis, we'll start with you.
Always a great question. So the job market is always a little fluid. We see a lot of different changes happening throughout the time. People are always looking to get some more compensation. A lot of different organizations are trying to get the best deal for that bang for their buck. So that's a consistent that we always see. The one thing that I've seen significantly different in the last 5 years is post-COVID remote roles. There seems to be a better understanding from the candidates. Not better understanding might not be the best way to say it. A more of an appreciation in a lower amount of compensation an employee will receive as opposed to have to going on site. So they'll usually shave off a couple percentage points of what they would traditionally look to go in the office, have to deal with the commutes, those things of that nature, versus, hey, I get to work from home. I'm going to go ahead and take maybe a little less than what I would expect on site. So that's definitely one of the areas that I see, compensation expectations have started to change a little bit.
I would say, I don't know how much it's shifted, but it has continued to be a very important component of a job search, right? It's the salary negotiation piece is something that always comes up, and it's going to continue to be an important aspect of any sort of job search into the future as well.
Definitely. I think for both sides, it's still just about finding the right fit where compensation aligns with value, work-life balance, and market reality.
Absolutely. And again, if you have any questions for our experts on the subject, please drop them in the comments. We're going to move on with our second question. At what stage of the interview process should candidates bring up salary, and how should they frame it? Hugh, we'll start with you.
Okay, so if you're working with a recruiting agency or a company, it should come up in the first conversation you have with any recruiter. So, I would say the recruiter is the one that should be bringing it up, asking questions of a candidate about their compensation history and expectations. And then, if you're not working with the recruiter, I would assume that, or you would hope that the interviewer would be bringing that up in the first interview uh, scenario. And how you should frame it honestly is, if you're a candidate on the job market, your salary expectations should be upfront and honest, and it should be part of any discussion you're having with the potential employer or recruiter.
I think you brought up a great point, Hugh, knowing your audience, because I think that could look a little different depending if you're working with a recruiter. Definitely let us know our interests are aligned, what we know. If the more we know, the better we can advocate for you, 100%. There are some scenarios where I might advise waiting for later stages to bring it up in a conversation. And that's only if you're working directly with a hiring manager. It didn't come up earlier. And at that point in time, you don't want to close any doors prematurely. So maybe demonstrating your value first, and then really understanding the whole role before bringing up salary conversations might be the play there.
Nazi, you bring up a really good point. I've actually had instances where the hiring manager really doesn't have so much control over the pay or the salary. So they're not always the right person. So knowing your audience and knowing who you're actually speaking to when it comes to that salary point is best served if you do that and understand, who am I talking to about compensation. A lot of states now and a lot of organizations are a little more transparent than maybe what we used to consider in the past with pay. So they'll give ranges out there as well too. So you have a little bit of a better understanding of what their expectations are. But kind of as Hugh said, if you're working with somebody like ourselves, please be upfront. Just give us a range. The numbers aren't scary to us. We do this every day. So we can better align and make the best use of your time to help you find the next opportunity.
Absolutely. And like you said, working with a recruiter, they will help you understand if there's flexibility, because like Dennis said, the hiring manager might not have as much say, but a recruiter will know that information at the very beginning. And our third question, touching back on what Shnazi said, can negotiating too hard ever hurt your chances of getting the job, especially early on? And where is the line? Shnazi, we'll start with you.
It's a fine line, I think, for sure. But yes, I do think negotiating too aggressively can hurt your chances, especially if it comes off inflexible or disconnected with the realities of either the market or the role. If you push too hard too soon and fixate only on compensation without showing interest in the role itself, that can raise some red flags. So my advice here is stay flexible, express interest in the full scope of the opportunity.
Yeah, I can give you an example of a time that negotiation not hard enough has affected someone. I had a client who was looking to hire a salesperson, and they got to the offer stage, and the salesperson did not negotiate much at all, and that turned off the hiring manager, because he wanted a salesperson that was going to negotiate on the company's behalf strongly. And so he ended up passing on the candidate. So it really just depends on, it can really depend on the role that you're interviewing for.
Yeah, very good points. The exact same thing. I've seen it happen myself as well too, where you can push too hard and you turn off the hiring manager from wanting to move forward with you, just because we need to talk about compensation. We need to have honest, transparent. But if somebody starts to negotiate too hard, it can kind of be perceived as hostile as well too. So going back to that, Snazi, we have a fine line here. We have to talk numbers at some point, and we need to be comfortable talking numbers at some point. But if somebody starts to feel threatened or a little hostage taken by these numbers, they may say, well, if this is a challenge working with you now, what's it going to be like working with you in 6 months? And so, go into it with an open mind and be ready to receive information just as much, and maybe not be ready to come in with here's what it is. And, if you're going to have that attitude, you might limit your windows of opportunities with different organizations pretty quickly.
Absolutely. We had two very similar questions come in from our audience. So I'm going to pull up this one. What research tools or strategies are most effective for understanding your market value? Really good question.
Great question. The one that comes right off the top of my head is know your worth. I think knowing your worth and what your range is going to help you arm yourself for those conversations Dennis is talking about.
Agreed. I affectionately also kind of say, be careful of Google. Glassdoor, a lot of those things. It's just like if we have the sniffles and we Google, you're going to find out you have all sorts of different problems, right? And So be conscientious, use it as a research tool, but not as necessarily a hard set. I saw these numbers on Google and therefore I'm worth X. Understand that it is a bit of a range, just as if we try to Google, hey, I have these flu-like symptoms. Okay, it's a flu, it's not something worse, right? So that way you can kind of start to get an idea. There's websites like Glassdoor, but again, Indeed will tend to give ranges, LinkedIn will tend to give ranges. If you look up the jobs that are similar to the position you're in right now, a lot of times you can see that stuff, but it's work within ranges. Don't try and go out there and find hard set numbers. You'll be challenged by that.
And if you have questions, just contact your local System 1 recruiter. They can help you out. They can answer all those questions for you, or at least give you some insight, right, from a market expert.
Absolutely. Your recruiter is your biggest advocate. Keep the questions coming. We are going to move on to our fourth question. What are the biggest mistakes candidates make when discussing compensation with recruiters or hiring managers? Dennis, we'll start with you.
Not being honest and flexible. That is usually the thing that comes up, is they've either priced themselves too high and not flexible with the fact that the market may not bear that, especially in these remote type jobs. You may live in a certain area of the country and expect certain pay, but the job may be somewhere else and the employer is somewhere different because that part of the country doesn't pay as much and it's a remote role. It's just honesty and transparency. They're just numbers. Let's talk about them.
That's a great point, Dennis. And I think we come back to that point where it's like bringing it up too early could be a bad thing here too. Just making sure that you're focused on the why of the role, not just the paycheck, but the understanding the full opportunity and the position.
I've seen candidates be inconsistent about their expectations, or they change and they don't have a good reason why. So you want to be able to, if you have a range, and you stick with it, right? If you're inconsistent, it can show, it can show a negative to a potential employer.
Absolutely. And we have another audience question. What is the best way to compare total compensation, including benefits, equity, and bonuses, not just base salary? Great question.
I think you have to figure out your value matrix here. So where does it rank? Because there are benefits, equity, bonuses, absolutely. But what about work-life balance? What about certifications, continued education? So I think first defining your values and then being able to quantify them, right? So you understand where your wiggle room is. As far as the tool, Excel can work, but really defining your own parameters, I think, is really important here.
Yeah, I would say
also, what are the likelihoods of a bonus happening, right? You could have a very aggressive bonus structure, but if it's based on criteria that's impossible to achieve, what good is that? So you got to put the value of something on the likelihood it could happen.
When you're at that stage and you're trying to, you almost have to sit down with pieces of paper and take a look, an Excel spreadsheet, something like that, and take a look at both those packages. One of the areas in compensation when we talk about benefits is something that I have seen be a significant decision maker, because health insurance can be expensive depending on the number of people you're trying to insure and things of that nature. You may run into a situation where, although the comp may be a little higher over here, the overall benefits package where healthcare is provided and there might be all sorts of incentives in there actually outweigh that. So sitting down and taking a look at both of them, really making sure you have a good feel for what your compensation is, not just the cash going in your paycheck.
Absolutely. Those are huge considerations. And our next question, what makes a candidate stand out as someone worth stretching the budget for? Hugh, we'll start with you.
I would say it'd be on a case-by-case basis, but any sort of specialized industry experience or something that is, apples to apples that a company can, say if you hire someone, they can hit the ground running and immediately start, solving the problems that you have as an organization. Having a specialty, those things can be worth stretching the budget for.
Definitely. And then I think the intangibles too, attitude, adaptability. It's about someone who's proactive, already thinking like they're part of the team. So anything you can highlight that's going to bring value beyond what goes on your resume.
Exactly. Well, both of those are perfect. The other part would be somebody that can hit that ground running day one, that is basically walking into a seamless environment that can provide that. a lot of times we find that hiring managers are able to push to stretch the budget because the value is understood very early on in the conversation. It's not usually something that comes at the end. So it tends to be more of a natural flow of, okay, hey, you can start tomorrow, for example, and there's not going to be a change in my organization, but work that needs to be taken off other people's desk and onto yours, and you're going to be able to run with it perfectly. Hey, there's value in that. I'd like to pay you a little bit more money than maybe what I had published.
Absolutely. And what's the best way to initiate a compensation conversation with your current employer without sounding like you're giving an ultimatum? Shnazi, we'll start with you.
That is a great question. And first off, I want to say initiate them. My first advice is before you start exploring, I would recommend initiating those conversations with your current employer if you're happy with the company. It's a compensation issue. And then next, it's framing it as a discussion and not a demand. That makes a huge difference. Position the conversation around your existing contributions and bring data points, what you've done, how your role has expanded, leverage actual reasons why there.
Yeah, the other thing you can also do a sanity check is take a look on LinkedIn and take a look at some of the job boards, see if there's been any compensation changes. You may have this perception that there is a need to have a conversation about compensation, but you might find out the market doesn't agree with you, or you might find out that what you're expecting as a compensation and what the market may be bearing may not even be aligned. It may be more. So, Snazi, great point. Keep it as a conversation. Go in with the idea that you're wanting to have a conversation and not try to sound threatening or hostage taking or anything like that.
Especially if your company has a formalized review process, that's always a good time to bring up something like that. It's up to you to frame how this would benefit the company. If you're asking, for more money, being able to point to your accomplishments or contributions during a review process is a really nice kind of organic way for that to come up.
Absolutely. And we have another audience question. Do you see companies becoming more transparent about compensation, and what impact does that have on candidates? Great question, Allie.
I'm definitely hearing more about pay transparency, and I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Making sure the value in your career and why it's hard to say, but people earn for different reasons. And I think the transparency is a great way to show people what they need to do to get in a higher bracket. But on the flip side, understanding that other individuals with more tenure and more experience are earning that salary for a reason. So making sure you know what you're asking for and what value tangibly you bring to the table to justify it.
Yeah, I think Dennis mentioned it earlier. Some states have gone to where you have to post a salary with openings, and so that's more transparency than there might have been previously. And as far as the impact that has, it should help candidates understand the market for what it is that they do.
Yeah, I agree with both. And to the double-edged sword point, I think one of the challenges is, although the perception is they're being more transparent, what's happening is we're narrowing the pay bands that people can actually get because they don't want to publish higher numbers than what they might possibly do, but then they don't want to publish anything too low. So I think we're also seeing a narrowing of the band of what their range is that they'd normally be willing to pay, that if they weren't so transparent, it might be a little bit more. It probably wouldn't be any less, but it might be a little bit more. So again, it's one of those things. I think information is key, as long as the conversation is being had from a reasonable, pragmatic standpoint. You might be pleasantly surprised on what an organization trying to be more transparent and what they're actually willing to pay.
That's great insight. And since we're on the subject of transparency, how transparent should you be with recruiters or hiring managers when you have other offers on the table? Dennis, we'll start with you.
100%. Please let us know if you have another offer or you're in the process of getting another offer. We're excited for you. There has been opportunities that I've had folks that have gotten better offers than I could provide. I'm excited about them. Then a couple of years later, I work with them again and help them find another offer. This is what we do. This happens quite often. It also gives our client or anybody that we're working with an opportunity to maybe reconsider what they were considering offering you. We don't want to get into a negotiation standpoint. That gets really sticky really quick when you start having competing offers. But there are some fine lines and ways to kind of navigate that. But 100%, just talk to us. Just continue, start, from day one, be honest with us. At the end, just be honest with us. If it doesn't work out, we part as friends and we go about it and we try again in the future.
I couldn't agree more, Dennis. Transparency is key. Completely agree. I think it also can work in your favor when you're having those conversations the right way, because it shows you're in demand and serious about making that right choice, which can help assist with speeding up timelines and strengthen your position in a negotiation, like Dennis said.
Yep. Your recruiter can act as your agent, right? So you need to be aligned, and part of that is being upfront and honest with the recruiter and transparent about everything you have going on in your job search. And if another offer comes up, great. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely. And our last question for the day, is it okay to use one offer to negotiate a better package from another company? And if so, how do you do it respectfully? Hugh, we'll start with you.
If you're working with a recruiter especially, and an offer comes up, and we just talked about being transparent, then yeah, it's going to come up with the recruiter. You let the recruiter, be a sounding board for you to say, okay, how do we, if this is something we can benefit from, how do we negotiate a better package, or how do we use this offer to strengthen our case moving forward in a negotiation with another company? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree, Hugh. I would caution people about pitting one company against each other, because that can get a little dicey down the road. So operate in good faith. I like to call it a good faith offer or good faith counter. Once you identify what you're looking for, have those conversations, honor it, and just know where those lines are to be able to have those conversations with integrity.
This is a tough one, and I think you both answered it very well. I tend to be a little more conservative when it comes to that, because when negotiating a better package with the company, I have unfortunately watched people kind of blow up the deal because they thought they were going to get maybe a little bit more money, but they really liked the company that they were originally getting their offer from, that might have been paying just a little less, might have been, well, in this case, was a closer commute to their home. Their work-life balance was going to be better, but the other company offered, X a little bit more, and they blew up the deal. And then they wound up having to go with the other company. So, make sure you know exactly why, that you're comparing apples to apples offers prior to try to use that as leverage. I want everyone to get as much money as they can out of the market that they deserve. I'm not suggesting that they shouldn't, but also be careful, because again, we get into that if it's presented the wrong way, it can come off hostile or threatening, and large organizations will shut it down and they'll move on to the next candidate. They won't play those games. So make sure you're willing. The risk factor of trying to do that is also in your evaluation of presenting that information. Tell a recruiter for sure, hiring manager or somebody that you're getting a direct offer with, be cautious.
Right.
Absolutely. And we are out of time for today. So thank you to our panel, and thank you to everyone that commented. Don't forget to follow System One on LinkedIn if you're not already, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you will find more job seeker topics. Make sure you tune in to Sound Off with System One every first and third Friday at 2 p.m. And our next episode will be Friday, July 18th, where we will be having a live Q&A. See you then.